Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Tales from the Pit. I'm your intrepid pitsman, Michael Swaim, and this episode I'm sitting down talking to the Big Bean himself, Mr. Abe Epperson, my best friend, co-writer, and co-founder of this network. I promised I'd introduce him in the intro, and then I think I pretty thoroughly introduced him in the episode as well, and that's just because I was feeling awkward for the first few minutes. So enjoy that secondhand embarrassment. But eventually we get around to talking about kids and children. I'm currently in the process of actively trying to get my partner pregnant, have our first kid. And I wanted to, talk to my friend about my reasons for wanting children, my fears around it, good and bad reasons for wanting to have children, and the idea of having a child in the face of climate change, all that stuff. Around kids and child rearing. There's a little short story first. Please bear with me. You can skip ahead maybe, 10 minutes. I haven't timed it, so that's inaccurate probably. But, smash that 30 seconds forward button if you must. Otherwise, the conversation will start right after the story, and this story is called The Quality of Mercy. It's no wonder we found a way to monetize forgiveness. Anything can be abstracted, anything ascribed value, and forgiveness is such sweet succor to all us sinners. We know this from Shakespeare and the Gospel of John, and from 1,000 private moments of relief, absolution, purification. It is a necessary mercy that we grant each other, a much-needed reassurance that we are all of us imperfect, and none of us exiled from humanity or redemption. Forgiveness is a magic power, the ability to lighten another's burden by the weight of one regret. To be forgiven is to be groomed by the next chimp over. What's not to like? If someone you've bumped wants to be a source for you, that's great, but it's not what we're after, right? Right, of course. If we can forgive ourselves, then we can let it go, and that's all we need. It just nags at me. Okay, let's remember our 4 R's. Now you've done number 3, restoration's complete, right? You reached out in good faith and you did the best you could to make amends. Yeah, I guess that's true. Okay, so whether she accepts that or not, you've done it. You should be proud of that. Thank you. So you're on to renewal now. Any trauma can inform. Any static can also be a signal. What's important is that you're trying. You're here doing the work. Static, I like that. We learn from our mistakes and we become better people. And that's what makes forgiveness so powerful, right? But we were so disconnected in those days. The screens that alternately connected and separated us also seemed to draw out our most tribal tendencies, make forgiveness impossible. So at some point, the idea of professional forgivers became an inevitability, then a business model, and finally an industry. Soon enough, handy services sprang into being that would happily match you with a well-reviewed licensed forgiver ready to hop on Zoom at a time convenient to you and salve your conscience. That's how we get that ripple effect going, that multiplier, right? That virtuous cycle. See, I can do it for other people, just not myself. But remember, one leads to the other. Think about how easily you'd forgive a friend who made a mistake. That's how much compassion you should be showing yourself, right? The more we forgive, the more forgiveness there is in the world, even if we're forgiving us. Easier said than done. It is. That's why we practice, though, right? What we focus on gets bigger. You're focused on letting yourself feel forgiven, feel clean. Let that feeling grow. It wasn't a confessional because you weren't asked to feel shame. It wasn't therapy because you didn't have to answer a lot of questions. It wasn't mindfulness practice, but it did help you let go. It wasn't sex work, but a session with a good forgiver could be just as healing. It was a brand new mental health product, an exciting advancement in the field of self-care. And, attracted to a new product as a moth is to flame, capitalism stepped in to do its thing. Forgiveness became something to hire consultants about, to manage more efficiently, to produce analytics around and reinvent just in time for the holiday season when studies suggest people are most self-critical. Having compassion starts and ends with having compassion for all those unwanted parts of ourselves. Ends with? Really? Well, Pema Chodron thought so. There's a book you might want to read, No Bad Parts. I'll send you the PDF. Cool. And no guilt if you don't read it. Right. That's what we're getting away from, right? Carl Jung said the most terrifying thing is to accept ourselves completely. Well, we're facing those fears here. We're daring to love ourselves. That takes courage, right? Yes. So don't forget to congratulate yourself for that. Okay. Now, we're about out of time. I'd like to end with our breathing and our affirmations. Sound good? So what was once a mental health product evolved into a financial one as well. Forgiveness traded on the stock market, allowing inveterate cynics to short it and make their dispositions publicly known. Forgiveness outfits started to offer lifetime protection plans at outrageous prices and monthly forgiveness subscriptions that ratcheted up their fees every couple years. Forgiveness vouchers circulated alongside carbon credits. Hedge funds and chemical plants and oil companies amassed forgiveness in great quantities, then portioned it out to their workers in lieu of bonus pay. But despite the ravages of the free market, some of the really good forgivers hung in there anyway. Finding one became like finding a good mechanic, a small miracle, not to be taken lightly. Deep breath in, and breathe out. I love, forgive, and accept myself with all of my imperfections. I love, forgive, and accept myself with all of my imperfections. I am wiser today because I have learned from my mistakes. I am wiser today because I have learned from my mistakes. Punishing myself is unhelpful to me and others. Punishing myself is unhelpful to me and others. I welcome compassion and joy into my life. I welcome compassion and joy into my life. I am forgiven. I am forgiven. And I forgive you. And I hope you feel that forgiveness. Thanks, Carrie. Okay, I'll see you next week, right? Yep, see you then. All right, take care. Bye. Carrie shut down her laptop as soon as the chat window closed. The house's power meter was already in the red, and she still had dinner to make. She wished she could check tomorrow's extreme weather warnings, but it would have to wait until morning. Tom would be home soon. With that happy thought in mind, she circulated around their place, tending to things. She fed the gray water from the sink trap back into the upper tank. She emptied the portable toilet into the debris chute. She shut off the main breaker and took out candles. She changed air filters. She dusted plastic plants. She sewed. When the sky began to dim, some 90 minutes later, Carrie lit the candles, kicked on their small generator, and plugged in the mini fridge, microwave, and alarm system. A cursory look at the surveillance app on her phone showed nothing out the front door but dust billowing down their street. No squatters, looters, or other strangers. Theirs was a relatively safe neighborhood. Still, she found herself holding her breath and straining to identify little sounds as she waited for her husband in the semi-dark. Firelight flickered across their studio, picking out shapes at random. Stacks of clear tubs filled with non-perishables, the gas masks hung by the door, the rifle, the futon. There were softer things, too. Throw pillows, artwork and photographs, gifts she and Tom had given one another. Carrie imagined them all piled on opposite sides of a scale and measured their relative gravities. She'd just determined to find her book and read a while when the clear sound of Tom palming the identifier pierced the silence, followed by the reassuring digital chime of their security temporarily disarming itself. He stepped through the door, a sharp burst of cold air and dust attending him, and quickly shut it again. "Sorry," he said. "Protesters, police on the bridge. Subway lines still down. I had to bike." They embraced, just for a moment, and didn't kiss. This wasn't because they didn't love each other. On the contrary, it was because they'd loved each other long enough to assume it as a given. Their partnership was a priori. It had coagulated over the years into something solid, and it was nice to be able to give each other that much security, at least. Because she knew him so well, Carrie could tell that Tom was upset about more than work. Even in winter, when rationing was tightest and allocation agents hit peak stress levels, He'd always been able to leave it at the office. Her antennae were up all through dinner, and finally, when they'd finished their microwaved eggs and potatoes, he capped the hot sauce and broke the bad news. He told her only what he'd been told, which was all he knew, which was that his employers would no longer be providing health benefits. Since the Supreme Court ruled definitively that healthcare was not a right, many companies were experimenting with alternative benefits packages more in line with the times. Rationale was simply following suit. They talked for hours, discussing fallback plans and emergency funds and tightened belts. It was one challenge among dozens, and it battered them just as the others did. With no clear plan of action, but knowing they still loved each other, they cursed Rationale and its shareholders and went to bed. In the morning, Carrie would turn the power back on, revive her connection to the outside world, and call up an article about the announcement. That's how she would learn that Rationale's CEO was being paid a huge bonus for saving the company all that healthcare money. She would even learn what he spent it on. He'd gone on a Wall Street shopping spree. He'd bought up the forgiveness of every mother who ever died in childbirth. Carrie would read that alone at home and wonder if such a thing could truly console him. That was tomorrow, though. The trouble with tomorrow, Carrie thought, was that it never stops coming. Lying in her bed under the weight of one more regret, all she could see was tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. She began to whisper so as not to wake Tom. She imagined the words appearing in the dark above her head. Punishing myself is unhelpful to me and others. I welcome compassion and joy into my life. I am forgiven. As she spoke, a poisoned wind screamed against the window. Carrie laid both hands on her round belly. The baby was restless. Because basically what I want this episode to be is like fly on the wall. Because I would call you to have this conversation anyway. This is like, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a guy. I'm a font of wisdom.
Well, yeah, you're my best friend, and I am approaching a big life milestone, and have nervousness and concerns about it. And so this is the kind of thing I would share with you anyway. And I thought we could just let the audience listen in, and that would make a good episode. We'll see. But to help with that, should I? No. I'll intro you in the intro so people know it's Abe.
Yeah, it's me, Abe.
I guess all I want to say, in case anyone came here through the kids' angle or just listens to Tales from the Pit, that, Abe and I are the main Small Beans guys. So you've probably heard us paired together a lot, or if you didn't, now you know. We're the co-founders, so there's a long history. I don't know. I'm beating around the bush because I don't want to get to it. Let's get to it, Abe.
Yeah. I mean, let's get to it. We've been friends for 15 years plus.
I feel like there was context needed, but then I'm like, as I'm speaking, everyone who listens
I've enjoyed you while you've had 2 marriages.
Well, I've enjoyed you. That's true. There was a failed one as well before.
We've talked a lot about depression over our times. We're professional friends, writing partners. There's basically nothing we don't talk about. If one of us really wants to talk about it, we'll talk about it. That's
what I was getting at. Thank you.
And you're very generous. I like to think I am as well, in terms of hearing what the other has to say and hearing where they want, more importantly, where they want to go, and being someone who can be supportive in that regard, but also something that's near and dear to us, and you can see it reflected in the movies we like. We're very logical people who like to not do things because things are done. We don't fall for the is-ought principle all the time, meaning just because something is doesn't mean it ought to be. We like to be free thinkers, even if destiny isn't real.
All right. I followed you up till the Destiny is the real part.
You'll get it.
Or
You'll
how
get
it
it.
connects.
Yeah.
I'll get it when I'm holding my baby. So that's the big news, is that Jen, my partner, and I started trying to have kids in a concerted way, where you have sex appointments based on ovulation dates and you take prenatal vitamins and all that stuff. So like
Sexy.
actually trying, right?
Yeah.
We started on the honeymoon. I recently went on a honeymoon to New Zealand. It was dope. I don't think there's a reason to ever share it with the audience, unfortunately, because I'll have lots of good stories from it, but there's no venue for it. And it wouldn't drive numbers. And that's what we're all about. That's why we're doing this.
That's why you're having a kid.
Yeah, exactly. For numbers. Well, I do want to do a podcast centered around my relationship with the kid I've pitched it to you.
Yeah.
The media feed. Yeah. So maybe we'll do that, and then I can say that I'm just monetizing my kid, and that'll be a good bit, and we'll all laugh.
We'll all laugh, and it'll partially be true.
But so I'm gonna have a kid, knock on wood, unless there's something physiochemically wrong. But I'm worried because I don't know what reason there's historically reasons that society deems as good and bad reasons to have children. And that's why I wanted Abe's logic and philosophy on brain on this, because I think there are a lot of things floating around my brain, and I want to list these are Michael Swaim's top 4 reasons I want to have kids. And I've always wanted to have kids. And I can organize the reasons into basically 4 buckets. And I think they're all bad. Like, I think they're the reasons you're not supposed to have.
Let's hear 'em.
So I wanted to get Abe's take on it. Well, I'll start with the one that will segue beautifully instead of doing it in priority order, because you already mentioned it, which is, I don't want to, it's not as simple as because you're supposed to, so you could accuse me of is-odd thinking, but it's more like, I feel like I'll regret it more if I don't than if I do, if that makes sense, in terms of checking it off the list of cardinal human experiences. Like, I was someone, I'm sure this applies to a lot of people, but I don't know. I've always been very thirsty for life experiences, fantasized about the first time I was going to have sex, the first time I was going to drive a car, the first time I was going to get to travel abroad. All these firsts in life I was very excited about and gave my life a lot of joy, having something to anticipate. And it feels like, well, you wouldn't have ridden the full ride if you don't have a kid, which is inherently selfish because it's about my experience being as full as possible.
Right.
But so that's, what do you think about that one? It's you're supposed to, but not as much as society compels me to, because in our generation, there's very little pressure to have kids, I think, these days, at least in our bubble. But
you ever think you go with girls because you're supposed to?
Because you're supposed to. Yeah, but I mean, you're supposed to in the metaphysical sense. I
get what you're saying.
As an animal, I'm physiologically designed to procreate.
Yeah.
I'm sure my body will release a lot of reward endorphins if I give in and do the thing it wants.
Right. I think the
that.
most compelling or interesting thing that you're saying here is the regret it if you don't, because it's a part of a plan. You want the full human thing. Because the is-ought stuff, checking it off the list stuff, I have less interest in talking about that. Cavemen had children, and they didn't even know that it was gonna happen. It's all the stuff that we're basically supposed to, because that is how the society perpetuates itself. The organism wants...
But it's not just society, your body, you know what I mean?
That's
the
what
animal
I mean.
itself perpetuates itself.
Yeah, and I think that is largely bullshit, although there's something to be said about
that is not how humans
someone should
perpetuate.
keep an eye on the fact that
they use egg husks.
If we don't have someone in control who's keeping an eye on it, at least we could fizzle into non-existence. But
you want to do the Vulcan thing where people mate every 7 years, don't you?
Yeah, what is that one? What is that
right.
called? The Tor,
I'm not gonna get that.
Oh, I thought you were
not an original series
Damn.
guy. I know the principle.
I thought they brought it up for Anyway,
They brought it up in the Simpsons episode where the nerds run the town. Let's get back on topic.
yeah.
That's how I know everything.
If you have a bucket list and it's very important to you that you check those things off, my thought is that is an acceptable way to live. You can do that, and that can be how you derive happiness. I've gotten old enough in my life that obviously this feels like sound by wisdom, but I truly believe it. Like, happiness comes from within. It's not about a number of external things you achieve or parts of society that you take part of, or you even lead, or you follow, or any of that. It always comes with you determining, hey, this is the aspects of my organism, and I'm happy with that. And that's where happiness comes from, is just being pleased with you knocking around the world day by day, doing a thing that you aren't unhappy with. Sometimes happiness can be defined as a lack of sadness, I think. And so if it would make you sad, if you are someone who feels regret, then that's something that you really do need to think about. But ultimately, man, the way that I've always led life, like if it's barely important on that checklist, like who gives a shit, man? You're gonna be happy by 9 other million things that are brought into your life. But from what I hear, kids is a big one. So a lot of people say they derive a lot of their happiness in later life from their kids. But maybe that's one of your different criteria. Maybe that's 2 or 3 on the list.
Yeah.
I don't know. Does that make sense? That's just kind of a framing thing. I don't really have an answer for you because it's a personal decision. If it's a list that really you do have and you find that it's important, man, that is something you may have to do. But like, what are other things on the list?
But how do you feel about the fact that that's not angled from the experience of the child? Like,
well, yeah, this is where we get into, I have weird views. I don't believe that anyone isn't solipsistic in the world. I believe that solipsism runs the world in a lot of ways. Even if you're trying to be altruistic in your heart and you believe it, you're still a part of the world that is largely for your pleasure.
Interesting. And you're locked into your life experience, which is true, but
yeah. And
I
it's
don't
not
know,
your
man.
fault.
Or maybe it's just not what people say, but Jen swears and seems to believe themselves that their main reason is the traditionally right reason, which is they feel like they can already see through the eyes of, the unborn child. Like, it's the compulsion to nurture something and make your life about something bigger outside yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I have that. I don't know if I don't have it, but it's that kind of thing where you're like, what does falling in love feel like? I've never fallen in love.
True, yeah.
Does it feel the same to me as it does to someone else?
I've never
Have I ever
felt
truly
it.
fallen in love? Or have I just had infatuations and I, by chance, won't know what falling in love feels like or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, this is a good question. I've never felt
But same
that.
about wanting... So, like, I've always wanted kids, but I don't want kids down to my core 1,000% in my bones, I know. Does that make sense? Because I don't know that about anything.
But that's the thing, is like, that's why I ask about the priorities
on that list. But people say you should feel that way. Yeah.
People say whatever. People fucking say a bunch of shit, dude. Like, honestly, you just need to find out how important it is to you. Like, you need to, like, I think there is something, because you're talking about projection, and when they're talking
about curiosity,
they're talking, there's a little curiosity there, but it's all it's an exercise in, like, what if in the future things were like this, and what will the future hold, and like, what and are
how
possibilities.
I feel when I project myself into that situation.
And that's a good thing to do. It's a great, apparatus that we have in our minds that we can kind of assess a little bit of, or at least pontificate on the ramifications and the possible consequences.
We can, like, simulate future, even if timelines.
We have no control, and ultimately, we're wrong. At least we can. It's a nice story. And sometimes we're usually right because we're pattern recognizers and we're not that stupid. And I don't know, when it comes down to it, that's an actual really good, useful tool, I think, that Jen is, tapping into. I have never had that with kids because I feel like that's where the organism stop. That's where it stops. I can't tell a child how to be, and I understand that is what like child rearing is, but like when I look back at how I was raised, I had a wonderful, blessed, very privileged upbringing. But even at the end of it, I was like, none of this had to happen. You know, like this was all
It's all gravy.
basically
for
a
Abe.
plan that my parents had, and it was like, and you technically after all that should be the best. And I was like, well, I don't feel the best. But you try and you try, and that journey is, you know, kind of like how you do it. So I don't know.
And
I
then
don't
when
think
it turns out you're not the best, you're like, maybe you guys didn't do the best.
it's not about
looking
getting
back.
exactly. It's not about getting the best child, nor is it about having it like you. What did you say? You know it in your bones. It may not be the most important thing in the world. It's a big thing because it's going to take like at least 20 years of your life where you are like
Right.
thinking about little else. But from what I hear, people are like, oh no, yeah, 10 years in wouldn't, you know, not even a question. Would do it again
Wouldn't
100
trade it
times
for
100.
anything. Right.
Because
I'd die for
I think
my
once you're in
kids.
it,
because you're
in it.
biologically compelled to feel that way.
Just like if you were to be like, if you had no interest in kids, but you also wanted to climb every mountain in the world, that from your first step to your last step, that may take 20 years as well. Where you thought you would think about little else. So it's
I've
about
already
choosing.
been thinking about nothing but filmmaking or little else
Right.
for 20 years.
The
almost
only
20 years.
The cool thing with kids is it all starts with fucking. That's what I think is cool.
Yeah, it is different when it's scheduled. And I'm sure there's people out there who love daily sex, but my libido is not that high. Having to perform every day is getting like, this is a lot.
I've never called you a consummate fucker.
Well, you have now. I'm clipping that out, making it my ringtone.
That would
Well,
be cool.
okay,
though, if
I'm going
someone
to
described
shimmy
you that.
in. This is not
Number 2?
one of my 4.
No, it's not.
No. But I guess I'll move on. I'll move on to number 2, okay. If it comes back to me, I'll shimmy it in. But it was hopping off something you said.
Does that
and I
help?
think it's
Was
going
it,
back
I mean,
too far.
you know me. The only time I talk, like I usually just frame shit, and I don't make decisions because I'm also kind of a coward. Because I could tell you, you know, like that's a bad way to think about things. Stop it.
That's what I want is if it's true.
If
or
it's
you
true,
like
I'll
that
tell
is
you,
a bad
man.
way to
But
think
honestly,
about it.
when like with this topic, I would be doing a disservice to everyone.
Oh, I remember what I was going to shimmy in. More of a question. I think I've heard parents say this. Oh, that was me too. That's no big deal. And of course, I'd love to hear from parents out there in the comments. But I don't really I'm not good with kids and I don't like hanging out with kids. They're not witty enough, if that makes sense. Like it's not stimulating mentally. I get bored very quickly.
Yeah.
Hanging out with like a 5-year-old. So will there be a 5-year period where I think my kid is boring? Because I do hang out well with kids once they can speak full sentences.
Then that's fine. It will be so quick.
Well, no, I'm just saying I've had lots of parents who say, no, you like your own kids because they're your kids. Like you think other kids are boring.
Yeah. Well,
I would love to hear what people
here's the thing with
experience that.
And I may be totally wrong because and this is take it with a grain of salt because I'm just a guy who has known several couples with, you know, new fresh kids. I think they're all silly. And I think it's the same thing with dogs and cats where you see something that no one else sees. I really feel like I haven't met a time where I'm like, I see what they're talking about. I think it's just it's
Does that
something our
include
brains
Rolly?
do. Huh? Yeah,
Does
of
that
course it
include
does,
Rolly,
dude.
our dog? You
Yeah.
don't think he's worth the effort?
I didn't say that.
This is devastating.
I didn't say that. He's absolutely worth the effort for me because I put in 0 effort to have Rolly in my life. So it's of course a win-win for me. No, I mean like I think people exaggerate it and I think it's not their fault once again because I think that the brain of the organism is such that it needs to kind of hijack those feelings and make that like the special boy, just like in our stories that we've been telling ourselves forever. there is like a special boy, or there's something, the one true timeline or something like that. You know, it needs to have the highest stakes, or we're a little less into it. And I think so that's a kind of a lie we tell ourselves. Not
So
saying
you
that
do
the lie
think
isn't
kids are
effective.
bullshit.
But I
Now
do
we're
think,
getting down to it.
I
I think
mean,
having kids is bullshit.
I don't have a kid. I don't want kids. I'm fine with saying that kids are a little bullshit. Definitely for the first 10 years, like you're saying. That sounds terrible.
All right, here we go. This isn't going well for me. My number two, you're supposed to tell me I'm a piece of shit, but not talk me out of it. My number two reason to want to have kids is to live vicariously through them.
Yeah.
And this is what I mean, is I'm now 38, approaching 40, and I already feel like stuff that used to bring me so much pleasure brings me maybe 70% as much pleasure because of the sheer fact of I've lived a long time and done that thing 100 times. And there's still new experiences to be had every once in a while, and 70% pleasure is still pleasurable. And I'm calmer now than I was, 15 years ago. But calmer also means like I see a beautiful sunset and I flip out less. Does that make sense? Or I do derive less satisfaction. Like that Klingon says in one episode of DS9, I think Kor the Dahar Master, do not live too long. The fruit of life does not taste as sweet. And, but I've noticed that if I'm doing it with a little kid, or even like showing a great movie to someone who hasn't seen it before, or even the abstract psychological idea of Rolly having a great experience that he's never had before, like eating ice cream for the first time or something, does give me that original rush. It feels like it's happening all over again.
Right.
So another reason I want to have kids is I do think, and I've heard some parents mention this, but not a ton. It's not like ubiquitous, but I do hear people talk about it. Experiencing things again through their kids feels like experiencing them all over again. And that sounds nice to me. Like a nice little boost.
It's interesting because I think there's two things going on here. One is the selfish act of I'm getting more out of life because I'm using you as like a friend variable to reach the thing that I want. And then there's the other thing, which is
or like watching, you're genetically related to me and I'm watching you play soccer. It's almost like I can imagine myself playing soccer.
Yeah, because the other thing is I legitimately want you to have this experience because it was a great experience for me. And I think that would be super awesome for you and you'd have a great time. And I want another organism to have a great time. So there's a selfish and there's a non-selfish. Here's why I think it's deep down, it's both selfish. Is that in the end, it always is going through you interpreting your events of whether or not they like it. You're going to also have this problem where you're never going to truly know if that was like pleasing to them in the same way that was to you, or if later in life they're going to look back and have a new admiration for it. You may not even be there for that. So there's a lot of things that like can get in the way. Or they might be
like, I hate the clarinet.
Yeah, exactly. Or they're just like clarinets are bullshit, which they are.
Ooh, I'm worried. What if they're like movies are bullshit, or
exactly?
I don't care about
you don't
pop
have
culture.
Control over that. But you can kind of, when they're dumb and mostly made of goo, you can make an impression a lot easier. And I think you probably would have a kid that would be into movies. That's not what I'm worried about.
But it's not a guarantee. It is, the odds are in my favor, but yeah.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I think you kind of will get what you want out of this podcast with my responses, because I think I've heard this one a lot, the vicariously living through kids.
Heard it from me or heard it in life?
I just heard it in life. It's just one of the
streets.
ones that, is up there in terms of why to have a kid. And I think it crafts beautiful moments. Like I just imagine someone looking on and seeing their kid do something apropos of nothing and being a proud papa, and whatnot.
Oh, sure.
It's a beautiful scene. It is
October sky. Your kid's going down in the elevator, looking at the sky.
I don't want you to go to the sky, son. Papa, I want to go to the sky.
Stay here on the ground,
you
kid.
Get into
go
the
underground. In fact, you
like
go down.
Me. Yeah, dude. Like, I really think that is a selfish you just want to copy print yourself because you think you're awesome, which is
Well,
good.
you want to ride the ride twice. No,
Right.
it's less wanting a second version of myself in the world. It's because it's not the narcissist thing, which I truly have self-inventoried and don't think I have as much as regards this issue, but it's the like getting to ride the ride a second time thing.
I mean, and that is partially for them because they can maybe enjoy it as much as you did. But once again, like I mentioned, you don't have control over that.
Yeah, it feels good to, and I'm someone who gets a great deal of pleasure sharing cool
But
experiences
you like
with
to
people.
share. Now, I think deep down you like to share because you like to be. If you bring the thing that was brought to you, so to speak, by that piece of media or whatnot, you look fucking awesome. Because
you
you're
have good taste.
Oh shit!
Well,
this
is the borderline between generosity and selfishness because I see it as being generous and sharing something cool,
right?
But this is where I think it's both. It's a wave and a particle.
You're probably right
the
about
idea. Like we get down to this argument that I think is an argument that can't be progressed from, which doesn't mean it's not worth bringing up.
Right.
But everything you do is technically selfish because you were compelled to do it by desire to do it, right? Or
right.
That moved your muscles and bones and made you do that.
We can't get out of our own perception. Yeah.
But then we also have this this concept of altruism or even selflessness or generosity. You did that mostly for the benefit of another person, but it makes you feel good.
Release. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that's true.
So just
hard to argue with that.
Spoilers if my opinions haven't shown it. Of all of Mike's friends, I'm probably one of the most who think that we're just animals that are, riding around in our own shit. And we are chemicals that are just released by a brain that has an instinct that is dictated by genetics and maybe some nurture to do a thing and give a little treat or give a little pain to the organism in order to train it to do a better thing. I think we are almost wholly dictated by that. And I find that philosophy and like faith and a lot of those things can alter that presupposition. But for the most part, if you didn't have it involved, you'd be solely run by your brain and its hormonal releases, essentially.
But that's why you arrive at the true wisdom being letting go and accepting things, because it's just you're on a ride.
I mean, I think it causes me to be a little colder because I don't want to see eye to eye with someone who's like clearly is just like, I'm being emotionally affected by this, and that's all we need to. That's all. Just I am emotionally affected by this. I'm usually I can be like, that's fine if that's how you want to go with that conversation. But like in my deepest heart, I think of this of myself. I don't think that I'm free of it, nor do I think that you are or anyone else who's ever been born. Now that might be my epic opinion, but from what I've seen of my experience in life, there's not much that has really shaken it. And so,
meaning the idea that everyone acts from self-interest?
Yeah, mostly, yeah. It doesn't mean beautiful things and beautiful interactions can't happen. That's beside the point. It's just and they can believe, and people can believe that they can like kind of lie to themselves and believe that they are being truly altruistic. Just doesn't mean that they are. But it's still, the result can be the same, and that's to a lot of people just as important and effective. It definitely moves and shakes the world. I
personally don't feel that it cheapens. So like if someone has the altruistic impulse to adopt a needy child and then it gives them a bunch of satisfaction, I am like, good. Or that's why our society's built the way it is to incentivize people with rewards.
Right.
That's
fine. My tone may be like preemptively apologetic, and it's only because I've espoused this opinion to other people in my world, and a lot of people have said back to me like, that is way too cold, you're a robot, fuck you, because people get emotional about it. So I've learned over time to be a little bit more like, well, okay, it's fine, you can
so
be
since you verge on the totally coldly logical, is it fair to characterize your opinion as having a kid to want to live vicariously through them is inherently selfish, but that's fine. Do it anyway.
I would
People are
say it's
selfish.
do it anyway, because there's no blueprint to life. Who gives a shit if you make a little tiny cult where you're the king? You know? Go and do that. People have done worse stuff. Now, that's obviously, I'm oversimplifying. Not that I don't think you would be a good cult leader, because I do think you have some qualities. But no, man, like I think you're going to find wonderful moments out of it. A child is going to be raised and have like a happy life at one point or another. Like there's a lot of good coming from this interaction.
Actually, I'll ask that. Do you think the climate change thing is a moral issue?
That one's pretty. I wouldn't call it moral, because moralistic, like, because what you really mean is you really mean ethical. It's not just is it good or bad.
Is it ethical from the
should you do it? Yeah. Should other people? A moral obligation is what you're implying.
I completely disregard the moral argument that it's like, yeah, you're right. Let's take morality out of it, because I know there's people who argue it's selfish to have a kid knowing that climate. But I also buy the logic that, well, things will only get fixed if there's a generation of good people working on the project
who are empathetic and care.
So I don't really buy anyone who wants to have kids as inherently selfish in this realm, like for climate change reasons. But I will say, with the AMOC dying, which is the Atlantic Meridian Overturning Current, and all these like warning signs, it is safe to imagine that the next generation will have, especially towards the second half of their life, extreme challenges to face in the world. Yeah. And millions dying, most likely.
People are going to die. A lot of people on probably from what
an unprecedented scale.
I mean, maybe. Yeah. We're probably going to be seeing, like Black Plague numbers at some point. But like, who's to say when it's going to happen, how long it's going to take? Because the same thing is true about malaria. Malaria never stopped anyone from going like, maybe we shouldn't have kids. It's really weird to do it.
Were they vampires?
Yeah.
Maybe we shouldn't have kids.
But I mean, are the numbers, how is it not the same thing, I guess? Like, I guess climate change is more man-made, and that makes people angry. But ultimately, what have you stopped doing in your life because of fear of dying? Not much other than literally putting yourself into physical harm. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So you may avoid going to malaria-based areas. Climate change is going to transform for the worse in terms of the shift. Like, we're going to have really sad spaces. We're going to have floods and we're going to have fires. I don't think that anyone should ever understate like how detrimental it's going to be for a lot of communities. But it's true that communities move. Same thing happened with the, like when the Black Plague happened, we were like, okay, it's the rats. We figured it out. Maybe we shouldn't do these things when we're dealing with the rats. You change. Humanity is adaptable. It's going to hurt. Yeah. But like, that's always been true with anything, man. I don't know. That's
Although
not
in the
anything,
climate change
but I mean, like,
analogy, it's more like, it's the rats doing it, but we can't get rid of the rats. Our entire economy is based on rats.
Yeah.
The rats fuel the ship.
Yeah. So I guess it is. I mean, I know it's different, but I'm just talking about like when we're kind of examining it with this ethical kind of, I don't know, like apparatus.
Well, you're completely amoral, so we know where you stand.
I don't like to think of it that way, but some people have called me that, man. People have said like,
no,
you're
logical does not.
You're trying to be outside of the world instead of participating into
Vulcan
it. And I'm like, hey man, if you feel that way, I can't do much to change it.
Hey man, I'm gonna watch you say that and just
and just be over here sitting, man. I'm kind of lame like that. I'm more of like an observer type, which is why I've never really decided to do like, I also don't have a drive to be like, I should go to Mount Everest and climb it or go to the deepest part of the sea, so I'm not fun, but I'm also okay with that.
You're not James Cameron fun.
No.
Okay. Let's see. How far are we in? Yeah, it's a good time to whip out my number 2 Are we counting down? No, we're counting up. So number 3. Number 3 of the 4 reasons I want to have kids. This one hurts to admit. To not be lonely in my older age. To have an automatic friend, which people are warning me like they won't necessarily be your automatic friend. They might not like you for whatever reason, or rebel when they're teens for no reason, or get addicted to drugs and die, or like anything can happen, right?
Yeah.
But I like the idea of lecturing to someone little and like teaching them everything I know, and then having them be a friend who's programmed to be like interested in the same things I am.
Yeah, that's fucked up, man.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, I mean, that's fucked up. It's not fucked up to want that. I mean, that's what people want out of their spouses. Now, you don't have you don't build a spouse, but you also want someone who's compatible with you in every way that matters, right?
Or like 7 out of 10, right? Enough that
or
you're
enough
like, I
that
can
you
make
can
a happy
deal
life
with it.
out of this.
But let's not call it what it isn't. Like, here's the thing: is that we're still. It's just stuff you're like, well, that shit doesn't matter. Like, I can deal with it because I love this part about them. But, you know, that's not my favorite thing. But when I think about it, I could live with that. That's just compromise. That isn't the decision-making criterion is still the same, which is, can I get the most I can get out of the situation? And it's extra weird when you're like, I'm going to build a little robot of me and I'm going to make it the most like me I can. Because I'm awesome.
No, not exactly like me, but at least interested, enough overlap in interest that we can talk.
Again, compromise.
And when I'm 80, I want them to feel obligated to come talk to me about movies and shit.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. In the end, once again, I think it's fine. Because
in the end, I don't care if you.
Well, no, it's not that I don't care. I honestly believe that, like, there are so many things you can do in the world that are wrong that most of the time you're basically doing the right things. There's just so much ways you can fuck up, and I know you're not going to fuck up because even though like it's a quote unquote selfish thing to have kids or whatever, in my mind, again, that isn't a judgment. You probably make a pretty kick-ass kid. You and Jen are top tier people, and so I know that you teach them like ethically how to navigate the world, kindness in their heart, critical thinking to the max, joy in everyday things, and what more do you need?
Usually that stuff transfers, but you can get a wild card where you're like,
sure. Yeah, like my parents wanted me to be like a realtor so bad. And I'm just, when I come home, I'm just like sad. They're just like, oh, why do you do it? Why do you do the movies? But they can live with it. It's like you're also gonna live with it. They're gonna make a decision that you're gonna be like, oh, because it's in our nature to revolt, especially if you are raising a critical thinker who's like going to have to flirt with one point or another. Maybe I should be the hero of my own story. Maybe I should just not like a thing because I've spent my whole life being told to like a thing that they're going to specifically want to, out of just searching for not having to regret it later. They're going to want to like disown a part that you probably love very much about them.
Everyone has to craft their own identity.
Exactly.
And
parents. A lot of identity searching is, I want to not be contrarian, but rather like, I want to expand my borders, and that sometimes means killing, the previous thing. What's that?
Your parents.
No, I mean, like, it's like, what is that? There's that old, like, it's like the son sharpens his teeth on the bones of the father.
Bones of the father?
Yeah.
Don't throw this shit at
yeah,
me
dude, you're
right
gonna
now.
get your bones all chomped up, dude.
Kronos shit.
Yeah, dude.
Fucking Oedipal.
Yeah.
Well, that reminds me of this. I wasn't even going to put this in because it's so pedestrian, but I think it's actually so common that that's why I should talk about it. I have mental health challenges that I try not to make people's problems, so they're definitely more pronounced alone at home. So that's worrisome. I don't know. I've already kind of come to terms with it. I don't know if you want to speak on it, but I'm like, my mom had mental issues that I observed, and I'm still happy to be alive. So that isn't a good enough argument for me. Like, nobody's perfect kind of argument.
Mhm.
But also, I think a thing a lot of parents struggle with, like I just lost a job that was very key in my income life, and um, yeah, where do you
But
stand
you're
with
all
those kinds
right
of worries?
though.
Like,
You're all right now. You're
mm,
covering it up. You're
not really.
replacing it,
I'm
right?
draining all my
Your
no.
funds. Okay.
I went from making like 100K a year to, if you multiply out what I make freelance, it's like 40K a year.
Yeah.
So where do you stand on that worry of like, oh, I picked a bad financial time to have a kid?
Oh,
Because
the
I've landed
financial.
on, what are you going to do? Or like, there's people poorer than me who have kids. What are you going to do? You know, they did it.
Yeah, I mean, like most things, like, making your body be a viable organism and healthy, maintaining your checkbook. It's garbage in, garbage out, man. Yeah, it is something that I think is actually one of the less selfish worries you could do, which is to think about and plan about how it's going to be accomplished. Now, I don't think money makes a good, for a good parent or,
Above
um,
a minimum, you got to have diapers. You got
I
to have
do believe
food.
that
Like,
you
yes,
you don't want to be,
you need some money.
yeah, you can't be destitute and also expect to provide for a child in a way that they'll understand. Um, Yet not that long ago, that was the truth of human child rearing. But yeah, I think that there is a standard. I think as we civilize ourselves and become more civilized humans, you have a certain standard you have to uphold, and I think that it's okay to think that the standards are fairly high in order to have a kid. Now
They got to
everyone's
have clever little onesies with phrases on them and shit.
yeah, you need these are necessary things that if you did not have them, you were a
I'm
bad
sure there's some
parent.
kind of baby cream you got to buy.
You got to buy 18
Probably.
different baby creams, no less, and I think that you have to figure that out for yourself. I lived like pretty like healthily middle class to upper middle class. But I know people, and a lot of my good friends were like poor,
We were lower
and
middle class. Your
they
natural
were
enemy.
very happy. And I mean, I'm sure there's stuff that like frustrated them, but like again, the human animal is so adaptable that in a lot of cases, if like shelter, food, these things are taken care of, um,
Yeah, we played with sticks by the creek and shit.
you're gonna probably develop just as good instincts and lessons for that kid to continue in life. I don't know, like it's wildly variant based off of the individual, and I'm sure there's the internet especially loves to tell people how to do things. It's like almost like the whole point of the thing. And it really is frustrating to see people say stuff that like I would actually tend to agree with, but like how much like have you seen in the last like decade online on like Facebook or Twitter or wherever social media is happening, where it's like, look at these parents just shoving an iPad in front of these kids. We're gonna like human civilization is over. It's like, no, it may not be the greatest decision, but humanity is not over. Like, what the fuck are you thinking?
Mm-hmm.
Stop being so. I don't think that you should necessarily despair if you're making less than you'd like to make. Granted, it will be tougher, but like most things in life, I believe that you prioritize and you make room for the things that you are like, this is important, and other things fall to the wayside, which is sad for them. But you as a person are going to figure out your own personal path to happiness because you can discard the things that are less important. And having a kid, you're probably going to put that probably numero uno, and you're going to be like, all this other shit. I can get rid of stuff that I love, like even my friend Abe, or, like maybe we hang out less, we do less stuff. I don't know what it is. It will seem sad from our perspective here now, but you're going to make it work because you have to. And that's what we always do all the time, forever until we die.
Okay, so since you already verged on it, let's bring up that and put you on the spot. Another question I didn't intend on asking.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, does it worry you, or are you fear that like we won't get to work together as much, or worry about small beans? Like, are you worried about the time suck?
Worried is an interesting word.
Yeah, I don't mean to oversell my importance in
No,
your
no,
life.
no,
If
no.
you're like,
I
I
think
don't
you
give
are
a
very
shit,
important.
bro.
I think you are very important to me, and I know I'm important to you too. But I don't think I'm more important than a kid. I would never argue that. Why would you? That would be a silly thing to argue because I'm not a I'm not a Xerox print of you. And people love themselves. No, just kidding. It's like I don't know. I guess it would be a reality that I'd be sad about, but I I'll tell you, there's times that if I'm in the mood, it's not a good mood. If I'm in the mood, but I'm just like overthinking things, where I imagine a scenario where it's just like out of the blue, Michael calls me and says, "Oh, by the way, Small Beans is over. You know, I just can't do it anymore," or something
Yeah,
like
I
that.
think about it every
And then I
night,
think
man.
about how not only that would that like soak up a main revenue stream for me, which would be sucky, but I would find a new job. It's fine. It would make me a little angry, but it's not the end of the world. But more than anything, like we have always been the type of people who hang out mostly when we are working because we love to work with each other and we are
Yeah.
workaholics. So we fill up all the other time with some other work. And if we're not doing that together, I do think about how it would in a way be a pivotal change in terms of how often we talk and see each other. You know what I mean? Because we wouldn't have that avenue of access. We'd have to force ourselves to be like, and let's play a video game every Friday or something like that, which can be done.
Well, we do movie night every Monday.
And so for a kid, I would expect, just as I expect literally every friend that I've ever known who has had kids.
Movie night might go.
Yeah, stuff like that will happen
stuff like
because
that.
you're going to have to raise a child. But I'll tell you, one of my good friends who had a kid, Jeff, we still play Rocket League like every other night. Because the cool thing about kids for a lot of people, it is not true for everyone, there's two of them. There's two humans who can take over and like tag team that baby, you know, like, so you can go enjoy yourself and still have time where you prioritize and you're like, I would like to hang out with Abe, and Jen will take care of business. And then there will be other time that Jen will be like, I'm going to go have do whatever, watch Lord of the Rings.
A schwitz.
A schwitz, yeah. So I think it's fine.
By the way, Abe saying tag team that baby is another clip out. Can we clip that out?
I knew as soon as I said it that it was going to be an all-time banger that I'm known for.
Phrasing.
Put it on my tombstone.
Okay, I think that brings us to so that one kind of hurt. I feel like I did reveal something that's damning about myself.
Oh, really?
Red flag.
That one doesn't feel bad.
You said it was pretty fucked up. I said I wanted I want to not be lonely, and you said that was fucked up. I should want to be lonely.
No, I didn't say that. That's the wrong takeaway. Are you talking about what I just said? Because I was talking about how
we moved on to
things
topics.
will change.
No.
Oh, the thing before, yeah.
Technically, the 1, 2, 3, 4 reasons I want to have kids.
But I was
unless I'm misquoting you, I think your stance on, I said I want to have kids to not be lonely, and you said, yeah, that's pretty fucked up. That's your stance. That's fine.
I do think I don't know if I said it was fucked up. Maybe I did. If that's
so,
true,
I'm just saying
that feels really reductive of what I'm saying. Because I don't think
my point is I put the list. Put the list in embarrassment order, so that's as it should be.
All right,
and I'm saying here comes number 4, which I think is probably the most selfish. Or I'm being brutally honest because it's Tales from the Pit, so it's true, but it like doesn't feel good to say out loud. Which is a classic one, the one that you're not supposed to do, which is to further secure my relationship with Jen. Yeah. Jen cannot leave me if we have a child, and I love Jen. Jen is the light of my life. I love hanging out with them every day. I am someone who loves very deeply, and I've invested all this time and love in them, and so I feel inextricably linked to them, and they want kids, so I want them to have that, and I also deep down am like, yes, lock them down. Like they can't, like there's an incentive now for at least for us to always be in each other's lives, even if we're just co-parenting, if worse came to worse, right?
Yeah. First off, fallacy. If
I
Jen
call
wanted to get
fallacy on all
out,
of
Jen
this.
wouldn't find. There are plenty of families that figure that shit out. Like they.
Kill the
If
kid,
you want to
cut
be,
the kid
if you're
in
gonna
half,
get
split 'em.
abandoned because that's the way it wants to go, you'll get abandoned, my friend.
I don't want to get abandoned. That's
But
like my main
but still,
thing.
yeah, no, that's not a. It's not it's selfish to want to not be abandoned, man. It's not a
What?
problem.
Really?
Yeah.
I would like to.
Life is
I
more
just
rich
don't-
with other people. Why wouldn't it be? I mean,
I don't want to be a lonely old man alone.
I know it sucks to think about that. I mean, I do think that if you were, you'd find a way to be like, this is fine. But
Like, I don't want to live the longest. You know what I
it's
mean?
okay to
Like, I don't
that.
want I don't want you and Cody and Adam to
You
all
wanna
be
die.
dead and I'm still alive.
Yeah,
I'd
yeah,
rather
yeah,
die
yeah.
earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. Get the
Get at it.
early
Get the
boarding
early-
pass, dude.
the
I love that
checkout.
shit.
Not too early, but earlier than some. Yeah.
So that's the first thing is fallacy, is that the thing that you're trying to abet is not necessarily going to be abetted by your decision making here, because you don't have true power. If
Even
Jen
if we name it
really
Michael Jr.
wanted to leave you, they could. So all you can
Dare
do,
you.
no man, all you can do is try to be pleasant. Just be a pleasant person, know your boundaries, but like, I think you chose a pretty good partner. They're not.
I mean,
super selfish.
we've gotten close times, dude. Or I have, like I said, you don't see
right.
the mental
You've
health
told
when
me.
it's at the
You've
worst.
told-
Like
yeah.
Jen has to watch me scream and hit my head and stuff.
And
there
it's
are
like,
times
is it
where
worth
they
it?
go, I love you a lot, but I don't know if this is like endurable. Yeah.
Right.
Which would be, if we break up, that would be why. It would be more like, I just can't handle the lifestyle of a husband who gets depressed every once in a while. But now it's like, too bad you got my kid.
Yeah, that's fucked up.
Yeah, okay.
But like, only in that, like, we do things.
And we were together for 10 years. You knew how crazy I was going into the shit decision.
We do things all the time, humans, that is, out
Yeah,
of fear of being
Yeah.
left alone, out of being
I thought that was just me.
out of being not considered the best at something. Do you know how many people who are narcissistic govern almost every decision they make and interaction with other members of the human race based off, they better think I'm the coolest person in the room, because if they don't, I'm going to be the saddest person in the world. And they have convinced themselves that that is true. I think that it's a very human thing to not want to be left alone, to feel like that is a failure, to find the thought unbearable. This is all true. This is all parts of being human. But remember that Jen has that too. Remember that baby has that too. We're all in it together, walking forward with the idea of like, I will support you in whatever I can, and you, if you can support me, if you can handle it, we can do this, and we both believe in each other. I think you guys have gotten to that point, right? Like, you believe in each other as partners.
Yeah, we're great. Yeah, we're especially good partners.
Right.
It's just that having whatever I have can be stressful on a relationship.
I mean, I really meant it when because I gave one of the many speeches, because you have a large community of people around you for your wedding. A lot of
Mhm.
people wanted to come up and say stuff, and I really mean it. I didn't have anything, interesting to say that hadn't already been said.
Because I'm
but,
not
like,
that invested.
I'm not. I don't. I mean, who cares? To me, like, you guys have always had this endearing aspect of you, where it's like, I've seen you confronted so many times with hardship, and when you have a kid, you're gonna have so much hardship, because things are not gonna go the way you want them to go, and everyone's gonna be strained, and it's gonna be just trials and trials and trials. But it's also gonna be beautiful things, I'm sure. And like, I know you guys have this enduring spirit. I've seen it so many times and times again, because I've seen you at terrible times, and you still find a way to like hug each other and hug it out, and like, support each other. And it's wild, because like, I would throw in the towel a lot quicker than you, man. Or at,
Dude, one time,
Jenna, at least.
and I know you don't believe in destiny, so this won't phase you, but I just think it's crazy. We were sitting in the living room, And I asked, really depressed, do you ever fantasize about divorcing me or getting out,
Right.
or are you thinking about getting out? And they were like, for the first time, they said, like, sometimes when you're like really flipping out, and I question what did I do? What did I attach myself to?
Right.
And at that moment, a lovebird hit the window and like
No.
injured itself and then
That is
flew away.
wild. Of
A
course.
lovebird.
Yeah, no, that's destiny. That proves all of my thoughts that I've ever had.
I was like,
have
that
been
proves we're getting
undone.
divorced. Yeah,
Yeah,
this is
that's
doomed.
that means there's God.
Oh,
Yeah,
I didn't go that far, but okay.
that's wild.
I thought it was a ghosty.
I think that's that's heavy shit, but it's also like there's nothing irredeemable. And I know that Jen knew that when they said that, and I know you know that now. It's just something the brain, we have those intrusive thoughts all those times.
Well, the bad move was asking that while I'm depressed, because of course the honest answer is I've ever doubted the relationship. Yeah, of course. Or like you say, that's totally normal.
Right. And it's like that Babadook. You seen the Babadook?
Not for a long time. I liked it a lot. I could watch it again.
The mother screaming at the child who is just constantly screaming,
why Babadook?
Why can't you be normal? Like, there's so much to unpack from just the idea of yeah, of course things would be much easier if you didn't have this mental disorder, but that's not the reality. You're gonna have times where you're really low, but you also are taking an immense amount of time to try to control it. And I'd say that, having known you through decades, you've gotten better. It's even gotten worse, and you've gotten better. There's so many people who believe in you, man. Like, granted, it's not something where you can be like, oh, well, then it's fine, and I don't
you can't
need to
monetize it.
But like, you also you're not alone. Even if you feel alone, that's what that's how I feel. And maybe
None
that's a sympathetic, wonderful lie to be told, but like, I don't know, what is life but not a lie to agree upon?
Well, true. The end of
Maybe.
I'm thinking of ending things will echo with me forever and is devastating. When the animated pig full of maggots tells him, like, I'm sorry that your life was really lonely and full of pain and no one loved you and you're just gonna die a janitor. But like, there's millions of lives. Someone has to have that life. It's not personal. Like, the world don't take it personally that it was you. You just had a bad life. Oh well.
Yeah, it's not.
And it's like, man, that's devastating.
It had to be filled. Like, I guess
that slot had to be filled.
But it's not like anyone's keeping quota. It's just like, of all of the
sure, everyone could theoretically be happy.
I like to think of it as more of like, as the closer you get to infinity, right, which is an unachievable limit. That means that there's so many different organizations of situations
that some people are going to
get fucked over. Absolutely. It's interesting that we've had this through, like, our human civilization has recapitulated this idea over and over and over as different things. Like, this is karma. That's all we're talking about is karma. All we did is, in order for it to call it karma, we put a system of justice into it, where there's some arbiter in the afterlife determining you now become a roach because you were this good according to these rules. We still, from early civilization, we had an issue with this unknown aspect of ourselves. It's not even like, is snake bad? It's not even like external factors like that. It's literally like, what if we die alone and unhappy and unfulfilled? Who hasn't had that thought? And also, you just go out and grab it, man. That's the best we can even do. And if you're too depressed to even go out and grab it, find a way to live with it. Either anyway.
Yourself. Yeah.
No, I mean, I don't know. It's all simultaneously fuck yourself, but also like, what a beautiful ride living is, Like, I'm like a hedonist.
Hate
and
that shit.
there's a lot of pain in store for me for the rest of my life. But like, also, this fucking rules, like, every day I get to watch movies, talk to my friends about it, stuff like that. You take all that away, human
it totally
adaptability
depends
is going to
on
allow
frame
me
of
to find
mind.
another thing to be into. I don't know. I have faith on that just because that's literally happened before, like
Like
through
when climate
multiple
change
iterations
ruins all infrastructure, you'll be like, I like this game where we chuck the rocks at the other rocks.
Yeah,
This
bunkers
is pretty
rule,
sweet.
man.
Yeah.
Like, never underestimate like what we tell ourselves to be happy. That doesn't mean that happiness is not real. I don't know. That's the way I think. Because any true, quote unquote, true happiness, I find that I could like deconstruct to the point that it's actually, hollow in some way, right? I feel like we could all do that. So what's
Well,
the point of it?
I mean, I agree with you that whether you're happy or contented has not much to do with your outside circumstances unless they become extreme. Like if you're in Gaza right now, right? Obviously, your circumstances
obviously quality
are
of life
affecting
matters.
right. But if you're in that middle band where life is normal and you're like living your life, whatever your struggles are, you can either be super upset about it, and there's a legitimate amount of stuff in anyone's life to be upset about reasonably, or you could be super content, and there's a reasonable amount of stuff to be grateful for in most people's lives. So yeah, it's just how you see it.
Yeah, it's how you see it. I mean, there's some things that we have expectations, like we have hands, trees don't have hands. Does the tree...
Good point. This will help me determine whether to have a kid.
Does the tree go like, well, that sucks. How come I didn't get hands? Hands are rule.
I always wonder if birds flying, looking at us, ever think
are like,
I am above that thing, or like,
look
score.
At those
like
plebs.
I can do this and they can't, and this thing I do is awesome.
Totally. That's why we should make enemy. Like whether or not they think this, birds should be considered an enemy species.
Yeah,
we should take down the birds.
Well, we're winning. we
are kind of winning.
Yeah.
I don't see them making us houses just because it delights us.
That's true.
Or delights them. We make
they win the long
bird houses. That's how good we are. We're like, have a house, little bird.
And birds make bird houses.
Yeah, but they aren't as
humans
good as
make
ours.
human houses, but birds don't make human houses. You're right. It's a discrepancy that must be addressed. Okay, now we're enough off the beaten path that I'm going to say we'll start wrapping up. So don't have the kid? Is this what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I feel like I've been largely unhelpful. I don't know.
No, it's helpful if I shouldn't have children.
I don't. I think you should have children. I think of all the, I honestly think that of all the people that I know, you're one of the top tier, daddy material. And I think Jen is, an amazing partner as well.
You're very kind.
You two are awesome and gonna make a cool ass baby. I just also don't want a baby.
Yeah.
Who wants
you
the
talked about letting the internet
Yeah.
decide stuff earlier, so let's just do it this way. Write down in the comments 3 options. Should I have the kid with Jen? Should I not have the kid? Or should I get a vasectomy without telling Jen and continue to try? Because that would be hilarious, dude.
All of these. I hate all of this. I hate all 3 decisions. I hate the fact that you're giving it to the audience. Yeah, man. I really believe you could have a cool kid, but it's gonna be a struggle. You know this.
I hate struggle.
So if you're up for it, man.
All right.
For it. But it
Next
definitely
time on
shouldn't
Tales
be
from
because...
the Pit, me complaining about the stress of parenthood.
Yeah, definitely don't do it just because you oughta. Quote, oughta do it.
You thought that was the weakest one of the 4?
I think that's the weakest one. I mean, I still stand by the fact that if you really do feel like you'll regret it, that is probably enough of a reason to counteract that. Because then that's not is-ought because society says that's is-ought.
That's more like flipping the coin. Or yeah, it's a helpful way to tell if you care. If you're sure you would regret it, then that tells you a lot about where you're at.
It's also tough because regrets can pop up at any time, and you'll be like, "No, I won't regret that," and then, "Oh no!"
And sometimes, yeah, I also get filled with regrets that are bogus. I'm like, I'll regret this, and then later you realize you don't care about that thing at all, or it didn't stay with you.
That's what I'm talking about. We don't know. We don't know.
You know what stayed with me though? Smoking that secret joint with Jen Lyons on top of that building in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't that good times?
That was a good time. What made you think of that?
I don't know. End of the show.